doing this all wrong. How's it going?
Good.
We have a small little intimate group today. All right, you guys want to get cozy, or you want me to sit up here and chat?
Up to you.
You want to get cozy?
We're good either way.
Why don't you guys scoot up? We're a small little group. And come on, scoot up. Can you guys come on? You're close enough. Tom and.
I'll be right there.
Me. All right, so I got voluntold to teach the class, so I put together the slideshare last night, and I definitely can teach up some stuff about it. And I guess what I want to know is, what do you guys want to learn? I want to make your hour rockin' and valuable, but I'd like to just jot it here to make sure that if my slide and what I had in mind to tell you doesn't cover it, I can make sure I do. What do you want to learn?
I would like financial advice for someone who is not in production yet, so has not generated any kind of real estate income yet.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a little bit more about that. So, but tell me, when you say financial advice, what do you mean?
Anything, I don't know what I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty frugal by nature and careful with the way that I spend my money, but I want to know if there are risks that I should be taking or investments that I should be making that will pay off in the shorter term, I guess.
Like lead gen investments, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean.
So we're going to talk about that. That is something that I have in here. So tell me the question one more time. I just want to.
Any advice that you have for new agents?
Advice for new agents. Okay, perfect. You're in the right place. All right, what else? I'm stopping until I get a question or something from everybody. We're a small group, so we're going to have some fun at the intimate. What do you want? Tom, what do you want from this class?
Well, you've been in the business a little bit longer than I have, and so I'd like to see maybe a breakdown of kind of where your business is coming from, and then really where you're spending your money in your business, and where you feel it's best spent. How about that?
So I don't have that on I didn't bring my budget because I'm in the middle of revamping some stuff, but we're going to cover that today. And if you want to powwow on that another day, I'm happy to do it. So where money is spent, I'm going to talk about this according to the MREA model. I think you'll find a lot of value in what I have to share on that. What do you want to learn?
I want to know more of the building generational wealth,
Okay.
and also where it mentioned here that you'll be discussing about retirement plan, how to set up for that.
Okay. There's a bunch of ways to skin a cat. I'm going to tell you how I did stuff and what my path is, and I'll tell you what I tell my kids and what I tell the younger generation. Everybody tells me it's valuable. So you can take it and run with it, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm going to share my way, like what I've done. What do you want to learn? What's your name?
Merlin.
Merlin?
Merlin.
Marlene.
Yeah, and more information about getting into investment properties,
How to buy investment property?
specifically like when construct properties,
So buying multifamily?
multifamily, yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else besides buying multifamily? Okay.
And anything else besides real estate as well?
What do you mean?
Well,
Other investments?
different investment strategies either that you have looked at personally, just to diversify a little bit as well.
Okay. We'll talk about that. I'll share what I do. And business mastermind on it.
I want to know about business too, but I do want to know because I got a part-time job and I'm doing real estate part-time on the, I want to do what I do with my my first money that comes in from real estate. It's not
Great question.
cash flow.
Where to spend your first dollar? right? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, literally.
I love that. Anything else we want to add before we get started? Especially specifically looking at the title, understanding your money, your plan for retirement, and then master your budget and build wealth. Anything else
Oh,
around
I
that?
have one more. If you have a recommendation for what to do with a 401k rollover.
That might be a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. I'm going to recommend Roth personally because I like it. It grows tax free.
Mhm.
So the idea behind a Roth versus like a 401k is when you retire on a basic 401k, you get the write-off on it now while you're working, but if that grows substantially over time and you retire, then you pay taxes on that during retirement when your income is less. So I personally am a fan of Roth for that reason, because you basically, you don't get the deduction now, but all of that grows tax-free, and then you don't pay taxes on it later. Does that make sense?
Yes, and with the Roth,
The thing with the Roth is if your income grows, you can get to a point to where you don't qualify. Like you can't invest in a Roth. That happens.
so if you have one that's existing, you just can't contribute anymore, or if you get to that point, or how?
Again, this is totally a financial advisor question, but I think the cap is somewhere around 5,700 or something like that, I think. And then I don't know, like, when you get to a certain income threshold, you can't contribute
Okay.
in it at all.
Yeah.
I just know that from what my CPA said when I hit that bracket, so.
Okay.
All right.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So, I know in investment properties, when you sell them, as long as you roll that money into another investment, you can defer that as taxes.
Is it 1031
Taxes
exchange?
Till forever.
Mhm.
Is there any way to do that when it is a primary?
Yes, rent it out, and then in the subsequent 2 years. I think it's 2 years, then verify that with your,
So if you've owned it for 2 years back, and let's say you go over, you're a single person, go over the 250, anything above that, is there a way to reinvest that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I would ask a financial person about that, because I don't know. I know that they, like, for example, if you're trying to 1031 it, they look at what address you file on your returns and stuff. So you can't say this is an investment property when you use that address on your tax return.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'll try to answer all your questions and then some. If you guys got more, hop in. Let's keep it fun and interactive. This will keep me on track so I don't forget to tell you stuff. I don't know where I'm supposed to point this. Anybody know how to do this? Where is Amber Lee when I need her? All right. Okay. So who am I, right? I think when I was putting this together last night, I was like, they asked me to teach about building wealth in the budget. Like, why do they ask me to teach that, right? There's a lot of other ALC members and other people that are qualified to teach it. And I believe the reason why they asked me to teach it is because I've learned the MREA model. So I've learned how to nail that budget. I'm going to show you how to read it and how to figure out some stuff and then a plan. I'm basically what they call a self-made millionaire.
Hi, I heard my name, what's going on?
How can I don't, oh, now. Y'all saw me.
All you
Wasn't
had to do is
working.
walk in the
Yeah.
room.
Your magic.
We swear.
It wasn't working. It wasn't. It's magic. You're just going to stay here for the hour. Sorry.
Well, Cynthia might be upset with that. We got
So-
people to recruit.
So I'm basically what you call a self-made millionaire. I grew up from nothing. I grew up in a single mom that still can't pay her bills. I have to pay her taxes so that she doesn't lose her house to tax, often, basically. But the reason why I share this is because I had my own journey in wealth building and how to manage money and how to do a budget, because there was a time that I did it all wrong. And my husband and I were both spenders, and we were what you call a train wreck. So we had to figure that out. And so one of the things that I personally hate to admit, and I never would like to publicly admit it, and then I published it in my book, is we filed bankruptcy at some point. And that was a hard lesson for us to learn, but I tell you what, I learned a lot through that experience, and I learned what I would never do again. So what I'm going to teach you here today in this hour is the basics of budgeting, why it's important, why this is a must, like personal and a business budget, and to follow the MREA, which is a Millionaire Real Estate Agent Budget Model. That's printed for you guys. It's the one with all the numbers on it. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then, what can I give you? So I wanted you guys to share what you want to learn today. I'm going to keep that in mind so I can make sure we touch all that. And if you want to go deeper or ask more questions, we can. And then the goal is just to leave you a tangible action step so that you can do something more than what you came in with today. I'm a published author. So in my book, I talk about the 2-year millionaire plan, and it's a really good plan that anybody can follow. And so I have 4 kids. My youngest is 18. I have one that just turned 21. I have one that's 24, and I have one that's 30. They all come to me when they want to talk about money. They don't ask anybody else. They don't ask any of their, my oldest is my stepson, so he doesn't ask anybody on his mom's side. And my 3 kids and my husband, they don't ask their dad or anybody else. They would come to me. And so my son has finally figured out he thinks he wants to be a pilot. So we just did his discovery thing yesterday, and he said, Mom, you taught me so much around money. And I said, here's the thing about money is people overcomplicate it, right? There's some basic stuff I'm going to talk about today that's going to sound so rudimentary, but if you don't master and nail the basics, you can't get any further. And so the basic stuff you could do is sort of what you talked about. So the 2-year millionaire plan I talk about in my book is, if let's say you're young, right, and you're in your 20s and you're buying your first house, and you could educate your clients to do this and you would be the hero. But if you lived in that house for 2 years and then you decided, okay, I'm going to buy a new primary residence, and you did that every 2 years until you're ready to retire, you're going to retire a millionaire, whether you put any money in the stock market, in a Roth, or anything else. You did that simple thing. Okay, so what goes into that? Well, you have to have a budget. You have to live within your means, and you have to always save for a down payment. So I think that's what people miss, right? But you think about when you bought your first house, I worked 3 jobs. I worked a lot of money to save for my down payment. If you always save for your down payment or investing, period, that's how you accumulate wealth. We'll talk about that. And so in my book, it's one of the easiest ways to build wealth, in my opinion. So step 1.
Where can we find your book?
It's on Amazon, so it's Selling Through Relationships. And I meant to bring some with me, and I did not. So I'll try to remember to bring that the next time I'm here. But if you buy it on Amazon, I'll give you one, and I'll sign yours. And I ask you everything in review. If you hate it, let me know, and I'll give you the money back. But I don't think you will. So step 1 is know where you are. So it's kind of like a GPS, right? Like if you want to go somewhere and you've never been there, and you have to know where you are, and you got to know where you're going, and you have to put that in the GPS so it finds the best path to get there. Well, you don't always know the best path, and sometimes you zig around. But I tell people, knowing where you are is starting with a network tracker. So you have to start with tracking your network, and everybody knows what that is, right? If you don't, I'm going to run through it. So it's all of your assets, everything you own that has value, minus all your liabilities, okay? So we'll use simple, easy, small math. You own a property that's $100,000, and then let's say you have a car, you owe $50,000 on that house, okay? And you've got $50,000 in equity, and you have $10,000 in the bank, and that's all the money you have no credit card debt. Well, your net worth is going to be $60,000, right? There's some people that start on this journey and they have a negative net worth. I'll tell you, my MAPS coach that coaches me through business is a total rock star, started with a negative net worth. So that's where you owe more on credit cards and other things than you have in assets, like tangible assets you can sell for cash. So if you're tracking this and you're looking at it, it's real easy to follow the plan because you're looking at it at least once a month, and you know if you're going forwards or backwards. That's a pretty important step. And then the dreaded B word. You guys know what the B word is? Everybody hates the B word because the B word is the budget. And I tell you, I'm the type, I didn't like doing it either. I hated it. And when my coach made me stop, and when COVID was happening, we didn't know what was going to happen, how the market was going to go. She said, you got to go through and redline all your expenses and figure out what you can cut. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But you have to have a written budget, and it's got to be something you'll follow. It doesn't have to be complex, but you have to at least know where your money is, where it's going, and how you're going to spend it. All right, step 2, the goal. So know where you want to go. You can have a GPS, you can know where you're at, but you have to have a general plan of where you want to go, right? So, and this is a hard thing to figure out sometimes, especially if you're talking to a financial planner and they say, well, how much money do you want to have when you retire? I don't know about you, but I didn't know the answer to that question. I'm like, I have no idea. How much money will I need? What about inflation? We're able to see that in real time right now, how that's playing out, right? So if you're on a fixed income, can you imagine our seniors that are experiencing this extraordinary inflation? It's a lot. But you have to have a general idea of where you want to go. And so the best way to think through this and try to work on it is to think, if money were no issue, what would you do? What would retirement look like for you? Are you still working? Are you laying by the beach all the time? Do you think that's going to get old? You know, for me, my version of retirement is just not in the grind. It's likely coaching people through money. It's coaching them through just all the stuff that I've learned over the years, right? I think that's why I'm here on the planet. And then step 3 is the path. So how do you get there? What's the plan? How do you get there, right? And I'm going to talk about some books and some things that I learned along the way. I told you guys it was a train wreck with money, right? My husband and I we filed bankruptcy, with the whole thing. And when you realize, okay, there has to be a better way than this, a couple of things are living within your means and just making sure that you, the point is, I studied everything I could about money. So when I was trying to learn about money and I didn't have that example at home, I read everything I could about money. So these are a couple of pretty good resources. They're not an end-all be-all, right? If you look at Dave Ramsey, the Total Money Makeover, and you take Financial Peace University, it's a great plan. He helps billions of people get out of debt. He's going to teach zero credit cards and zero-based budgeting, which is okay. It's a great way to get there. But there's other people you can talk about that will say, okay, leverage your money, it can make you more, right? So a prime example of that is if you look at, we have an investment property that's locked in at probably 2%, right? Why would I pay that off if I have the cash if I could get 5% in a CD? It just doesn't, the numbers don't make sense. So I'm a fan of leveraging the money, but there's another one called Why NAB, which is you need a budget, and it talks about why you need a budget. And the premise here is if you don't tell your money where to go, you're going to wonder where it went. So the same thing is true for your business budget, and going back to how do I spend my first dollar, right, in real estate? How do I put together a plan? Well, I'm going to tell you about that, but at the end of the day, when you get that dollar, you need to know how and where you're going to spend it. What makes sense, right? And then The Richest Man in Babylon. This is an amazing book. It's a very hard book to read. It's a very hard book to read. Has anybody here read that? You've read it? Is it hard to read or was it easy?
It was not easy.
It's a read and a reread and a reread. I will tell you that the modern day version is much easier to read.
That's the one that I read.
Yeah, let's try to read the other one. That's the one I read.
Yeah. Well, I started on the other one. No.
Yeah. So it's hard, but there's some amazing fundamentals in there around money. And I'm like, man, I could do a whole class just on this book because it is just so incredible. It's one of the best books I've read around money. But it takes so long to just understand the dialect in which that book was originally written, because it's a really hard read. Even the modern day version is a little tough to understand. But to really understand what that means, and so the premise behind it is, don't spend more than you make, no matter what that number is. You have to save some money, right, to invest, and you also have to be smart with where you're spending your money. I think in the book he talks about he trusted the bricklayers to invest in diamonds or something like that. So the point is, you're not going to ask broke people for financial advice, right? You're not going to ask people that don't know, like for example, you guys are asking about CPAs and rollover. That's not my wheelhouse. I have very limited knowledge based on my own experience. You want to ask about real estate? I can argue with the best attorney about that, right? I know that. I've done it for a long time. All right. So where most people fail. So let's just talk about that, because literally this is where people fail. They don't do the basics. So they have no written budget. They're not course correcting quickly. So again, looking at your net worth tracker every single month, even if it's painful, even if it's negative, even if you don't want to see it, you've got to have some type of plan. You've got to course correct quickly. So if you're off path, by looking at that every single month, you can say, ooh, I need to cut some expenses, or I need to figure out where I need to spend more time in revenue, etc. So not reviewing your financials regularly. This is, you have to look at your budget and your financials regularly, even when you don't want to. And there's times I don't want to, and you still have to do it. So the best way to do it is I hire a bookkeeper. For $200 a month, they give me my MREA numbers, and I know if I'm off and where to fix it. Also, not paying yourself first. So this is a big principle in The Richest Man in Babylon. Pay yourself first and pay yourself consistently. So what does that mean? When you get a paycheck, save a percentage of that towards wealth building, right? You open up, in my case, I opened up a separate bank account. I put that money there and I said, I'm not gonna spend it until I know how to how to wisely invest it or spend it somewhere that can make me money. And you always have to do that. If you're always paying all the bills and there's not money off the top for you and investing in wealth building, you're gonna do the same thing. You're doing the same thing when you're 50 and 60 and 80, and you're gonna retire broke. It's just the way it is. It gains some snowball and some traction once you start to do it. And if you don't have any debt, it's a good fast track to get there. So, not doing the research on investments. We talked about this. So don't invest in things you don't understand or they sound too complex. If someone comes to you or you get a financial advisor and it sounds so great, like too good to be true, and the return on investment looks amazing, it just sounds so complex and you don't understand it, don't invest in it. Don't do it. If you don't, real estate's simple, right? We understand that. You look at the math and you know what it can rent for, you know what you can buy it for, you know what your mortgage payment's gonna be, you can sort of calculate all that stuff. So it makes it an easier investment, I think, than with the stock market. And then not spending less than you earn. You can't out earn stupid, right? I think that's the way Dave Ramsey says it. If you're earning less than you're spending, you just have to start with revamping your budget. And sometimes people don't like that. I mean, but I have a lender background, so when I'm sitting with a client, sometimes I can't help but coach them through their finances. It's just in my DNA. It's how I'm wired. But if I see $1,000 in car payments, and then I see, I've seen car payments higher than their housing payment, and I'm like, there's something off about that, right? So you have to be willing to do the stuff that keeps you spending less than you earn. Sometimes that means selling the car, sometimes that means living with family, sometimes that means selling the house, but you've gotta shake the sugar tree to break up the budget to live within your means, basically. All right, so the rules of money. And so I've taught my kids this since they were little. My oldest daughter, Madeline, popped in, and she'll tell you, she remembers me saying this all the time. I would tell my kids when they were little, when they would earn just allowance and stuff, I'd say, it's to get them thinking, right? And if you think like that as a kid, and you get $1, I used to tell them, how can you take that $1 and turn it into $5? Well, with inflation, it's probably 10 now, but the point is how, and that's one of the questions you had, right? How do you get, when you get the money, where do you spend it? That's the strategic thinking. Not only personal, but in your budget. It's just where really looking through your sources, where everything is coming from. How do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? Well, if you're brand new and you don't have any money, it's gonna be time. That's the cost of admission. So you gotta spend your time wisely because it's money. So you should always be thinking, how can I take this $100 and turn it into 1,000, right? And if you turn it into 1,000 and you're doing the 20% rule and you take $200 off the top, that goes into your investment account, and you take that money, and $200 is not gonna buy you much, right? But if you keep saving that, you're gonna be able to invest that over time. You get to a high enough amount, you can put it in a high yield savings. It's a good stepping stone that will earn you interest. And then I talked about the lifestyle. Sometimes you have to make big adjustments in your lifestyle and your finances to even scratch the surface and get ahead on this. Once you do, it really works. So in Gary Keller's book, The MREA, he talks about all these different models. Well, I guess I'm slow learner, I'm late to the party, but I remember the first time I read this book, I was like, I don't understand all these models. Are these different business models? Are you doing them all at once? Like, I just didn't understand it. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. As I've reread the book several times and I live in it, and now I'm teaching it, I understand it. But the economic model helps you understand where your money is coming from. So that's your lead generation model. You might have heard people at Keller Williams say that. How are you going to get your business? Your budget model explains what do you do with that revenue once you actually receive it, right? And so the purpose is to highlight where you spend your attention to reap the highest dividends. And so he also talks about spending, meaning lead with revenue. So going back to your question that you had is you don't finance stuff, right? We get called by people all the time that have this shiny object that you can buy and it's going to get you leads. If you're a new agent, don't do that. Even if you're a seasoned agent, don't do that. You need to understand where your money is going. And the good thing about once you have a budget and you get some traction, you know exactly how much you can spend on everything. So when you're looking at what you're spending money on, and if it's working, now you have to determine, okay, would I spend money on this new thing, or am I going to keep it where I have a proven track record and I know it works? So spending, lead with revenue, so again, make some money before you can spend a little bit on lead generation. Play red light, green light with your expenses, so it's really, where you really look at it and say, okay, is this serving me, do I need to continue to pay for it? Or should I spend more money on this because it's giving me some return on my investment for the dollar spent? And you wanna really question and assess and build an accountability for everything you're doing, so this is where it's helpful to have an accountability partner, because you guys can work on that together. If you're a new agent trying to figure out how to make your money, go figure out how you can lead generate together. Hold open houses. I mean, I have a hard time getting my team to hold as many open houses as we have. So if you want open house opportunities, let me know. We always have them. It's a good way to make money. You just have to get in there and talk to people and be willing to do the work. So in MREA, there's a sample profit and loss that is on 349 to 355 that will help you to understand some of the basics. All right, now we're at this lovely chart here. So in the pages in the handout that you guys got, I printed something from the Outfront magazine. It says the budget model, your plan, or your path to profitability. If it's okay with you guys, I'm gonna spend a minute to read this. Some of it I went over a short version, but it's so important, the stuff that's in here. And then we're gonna talk about this, and the last one's just a chart of accounts, like how to put it all in there so it makes sense. So in this article, Gary said, the article is the third in the Back to Business Basics. Now they wrote this pre-COVID, right before COVID, which I thought was interesting. It was January 2020. One that is aimed at helping you achieve greater success by using models outlined in Gary's Millionaire Real Estate Agent. The MREA gives you the how to achieve the goals and shows you where to focus your time to achieve the greatest impact. That's because successful agents have left clues. Which of their actions led to the desired results? The MREA is a compilation of those clues. Since its original publication 17 years ago, the MREA has sold 1.3 million copies, withstanding market conditions and the test of time to help both new agents and seasoned pros alike. Stop reinventing the wheel, let the MREA be your guide. So this is what we're gonna chat about today as the budget model. Reinventing the wheel every time is just plain exhausting work, and it leads to breakdown and burnouts. On the other hand, I think you'll discover that modeling will be very empowering, and in fact, it makes things appear so simple that it feels like cheating. Powerful models usually feel that way, says Gary Keller. So the budget model. So people think, when I say the B word, it really is a bad word. People hate budgeting. I hated it, so I get it. But it gives you freedom, is what you'll find out. Is when you have a budget, it truly gives you freedom because you get to figure out where and how you want to spend your money. So your financial freedom begins when you stick to a budget. It may seem counterintuitive that adhering to a strict plan for spending will ultimately lead to freedom to spend your money and time in ways that are most important to you, but it's true. The key to budget success are to implement the MREA's budget model early in your business. So back to I'm getting my first dollar, how do I spend it? Keep it simple, plan annually, review it regularly, and stick to it. So you can plan annually, but I'm going to highly recommend that you look at it monthly. Even if you don't have much going on there, just look at it. You're going to be spending some of the stuff you're measuring with time versus dollars in the beginning. So whereas the economic model helps you understand where your money is coming from, the budget model explains what happens to revenue between the time you receive it as gross revenue and keep it as net income. Its purpose is to highlight where you should focus your attention to reap the highest dividend. According to the model, your business budget is divided into two broad categories: cost of sales and operating expenses. There is no miscellaneous subcategories under either. Follow the sample profit and loss as reported on pages 349 to 355. Every expense must fall into one of these categories, even if you do not spend in every category, right? And that's possible. Like you might not spend in occupancy if you're a new agent. You're not renting an office, you don't need to. You can work from home or work from the market center. The cost of sales is the actual cost of capturing and converting leads into sales. We're going to talk about, highlight that for a minute because we're going to come back to that on this. Operating expenses are everything else. Your big two that will consume about 78% of your operating expenses are salaries and lead generation. So if you have people that you're paying, whether it's an assistant or salespeople, and if you're spending any money to lead generate, even if you bought signs, it's a cost to lead generate, it's a cost of sales. All right, spending, talking about leading with revenue. So when it comes to spending, you must only spend what you earn. When you start a new business, that can be tough, but minimizing your startup cost and debt will help your business survive. The if you spend it, they will come approach is no guarantee that you'll see a return on the investment in marketing or infrastructure soon enough, if ever, to benefit your business. Casual spending and the phrase, this is only the cost of a commission from one more sale or the bane of the millionaire real estate agent. So like if someone says, oh, I can buy this training, but if I just get one more sale, it'll work. He's saying, don't do that.
It'll pay for itself.
Huh?
It'll pay for itself.
Yeah, he's saying don't do that. Like lead with success first. So play red light, green light. Once you begin spending, the model will guide you to focus on the results you're getting rather than the amount you're spending. Meaning you hold every dollar accountable for results. So just like your people, right, and you have things that they're accountable to. I used to tell my kids, when you get $1, you need to make them work like little slaves, right? Let that dollar multiply into 5 or 10. So that's what I mean by hold every dollar accountable for results. To insulate your business against the unexpected shifts in income, keep fixed costs like rent, salaries, and leases as low as possible. When you find your expenses creeping up in cost, and they will, without a corresponding increase in results, it's time to pull up a stop sign and reevaluate that expense. If it's generating more revenue than it costs, give it a green light. And if you're making money, keep doing it. And if you're not, obviously, that's where the red light comes into play. You want to stop doing it and change what you're doing or spending. Question, assess, and build an accountability. So be in the habit of questioning any new expenses. Each new request for purchase, marketing plan, or staff addition should be presented with a detailed budget that specifies how that expense will increase the income, save expenses, or create higher profitability. So one of the biggest things I see people make, like agents make, in terms of not understanding this paragraph here is so I need an assistant, I'm just busy. Well, we don't have a detailed plan on what your assistant's gonna do before they start, and you don't know exactly what they're gonna be doing, so that it will free you up to make more calls or do the things that will continue to increase revenue, then you're doing it wrong. And trust me, I did this a lot, that's why I'm saying that. Avoid impulse or urgent spending that will protect your net income. That's easier said than done, right? So pay attention to your money, pay yourself first, save it. For investing, and don't spend it. Stick to your budget, and when you have to spend outside of it, make sure the move is absolutely justifiable. So if you're spending outside of your budget, does it make sense? Can you justify that, right? So one of the ones for mine is I'm over on occupancy, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Well, I own the building, I don't rent, so that's justifiable, right? To me, and that's an example of what Gary's saying here. So if you, the business owner, are the person struggling the most with spending outside of the budget, find a pro, such as a CPA, financial consultant, a bookkeeper is a good one to hold you accountable. Schedule regular budget review meetings with them, I recommend monthly, then heed their advice. If you don't deal with your off-budget spending early in your business, the problem will only get bigger. A pro tip, one easy way to avoid bad spending habits is to separate your operating expense from your deposit account. That's a big one. I didn't mention that yet. If you don't have a separate business bank account, do it now. Do it now. And as soon as you can set up like an LLC in your name, do it. You have to register with the state, but keep all your business expenses there. Pay yourself separately personally. On a schedule, only transfer from that deposit account what's been budgeted, right? So you can factor in cost of sales. I'll show you how to do this if you're an agent. Require an expense justification form written and signed for every modification of the budget. When you build in systems and processes, they tend to serve two purposes. First, they help keep your good habits and do the right things, and second, they make it very, very difficult to regress into old bad habits and do the wrong things. Was this worth it for me to take a second to read this? And I think it's super valuable, and you'll probably definitely reread it. So let's talk about this, right? So when people are asking about budgeting and how do I spend my money, where do I spend it, how do I start, how do I know how much I should be spending on what, right? So if you look at the top, this is best practices, and this is in the MREA model. And at the top, it shows your gross commission income. So the first column is 150,000, second one's 340, then 640, then 970, 1.6, 3.4, a million, and then 2.5. And so you'll notice something interesting. I want you guys to look at the top, and then I want you to look here at the bottom. See where it says net income? Tell me what you notice about that stands out.
Decreasing percentage.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Because you invest more as you grow.
That's actually why it goes down. In the middle category, you invest more as you grow, you invest in people, you invest in tools, you invest in systems, that's why it drops. But that's not why the first one's higher. Why is the first one at 49% net income at 150,000, where if you're making, double that at 340, it's only 38%? Why is that? Why is it higher at 49% when you're making 150,000?
With revenue, before you start spending, you've got to have.
Because that's a reasonable living expense, or
Nope. This is why you'll have to read and read and reread this. So you look right here. This is where they break it down. So salaries and benefits. So it gets a little bit on your point, but 150,000, that's what they're recommending the salary is. And then you see here your salaries go up. So that's salaries to other people. That could be an assistant or whatever as you jump to that 340 mark. This is why it changes. And there's percentages on each one, right? So can I get a range in here on income? Can you guys tell me where you are in GCI? I know we're from 0 to where? Where are you, Tom?
Or for last year, it's around the 150, a little bit lower,
Okay.
probably 140.
Anybody higher than that? Okay. So I'm going to encourage you to pretty much ignore the top part for right now and look at this part right here. So if you're at 150,000, even if you're not at 150,000, right, and you're trying to figure out how to spend that first 3,000 bucks, the principle is the same. So I want to go back to I'm a new agent, how do I figure out where to spend my money and spend it the right place? So let's use 3,000 bucks. Shall we? Can you do that? We're going to spend some time on this. I know it sucks and nobody likes the numbers, but this is truly where you learn. So let's say it's 3,000 bucks. And this is your first 3,000 bucks you made. You're nowhere near 150,000. But you got your first commission at $3,000, and you just know you can't spend it all if you're going to grow your business, right? Everybody understands that. You agree that 3,000 is pretty conservative. Probably more than that, right? You guys want to use a higher number than that? Use 10,000?
7.
Let's use 10. How about that? It's a round, easy number.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got a $10,000 commission. It's your first one. You guys do some math? Can someone calculate some stuff for me? All right. So we got $10,000 commission. The first thing for your GCI is your salaries and benefits. What's 5.6% of that of $10,000? How much? 560? Kind of sound like we're going to be a little bit of a slave to our business at the beginning, doesn't it? All right. So what about professional services? 2.2%. How much is that of $10,000? Okay, what about, okay, we're adding those together, sorry. $780. This is your total top line for GCI, okay? Now, lead generation, this is what they're saying you should spend to make more money, right? So part of this, you're gonna have to advance and buying signs, unless you piggyback with some money, you just invest your time, right? Like we have signs someone could borrow if they brought them back. So listing management, you might not even have a new listing right out of the gate, but what's 3.4% of 10,000? Should we 140 bucks? Yeah. I realized when I was doing that, I picked 10,000 for a reason to make it easy. And I'm trying to do math. All right.
I was like, I'm not good at math. It's surprising that I'm not using
So, but you see how easy this is, right? So your listing management expense, if you only made your first $10,000, you only have $340 to invest on your listing. Let's say you sold a buyer and that was your commission. Deal number 2 is a listing, and you need to figure out how to spend your money, right? Because you have to make this $10,000 last so you can grow it, right? So list, and you got a new listing. Well, according to the budget model, if you made $10,000 and that's all you have $340 to spend in listing expenses. So what does that mean? If you only have $340 to spend, how are you gonna market your listing?
For free on social media, like take advantage of free resources.
That's right. Yep, you're gonna, and then how else? You're gonna use your time and your legs and your brain, and you're gonna use something that doesn't cost money, right? You can do it. You can sell a house, right, by door knocking and open housing and social media and all those things, right? Talk to other agents. All right, so general prospecting and marketing, 7.8%, right? So that's $780. Now you got a few more dollars here, right, to spend on lead generation. If my math is off, you guys tell me. I think that's right. Is it 1120? And then the next part, and this is the fun part, right? Where if you know the numbers, and you probably heard that before, know the numbers, right? Know your numbers. This is what they mean by know the numbers. So if you're dealing with $10,000 and you're figuring this out, so now you have $1,100 to spend on lead gen and marketing and listing management. Now the next part is your expenses. So you can get a few dollars back, right? I'm gonna mark this off here and just put expenses over here. So if you have occupancy, that's 2.9%. So that's gonna be $290, right? From your $10,000 that you pay to have an office or wherever you're parking your bike, right? And education and training. This is a good one. It's a big one. I've had conversations with agents here, including some that are on the ALT that are like, I want to sign up for mass coaching, or I want to sign up for mastery. And I'll say, okay, great. Do you know if you can? And they look at me like, what do you mean? Well, look at their budget model. What's your income? Right? So according to this, if you made $10,000, you can invest 5% of that in coaching and training. What does that mean? You got $500. So what does that mean? Are you going to family reunion your first year if you only sold one property? No, it's not in the budget. Right? If you sell two, you probably can, because you could piggyback that or save it or whatever you want to do. All right, supplies and office expenses. You got another $270 here, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? How you want to chunk everything down and then put it all into a category, and then someone says, oh, I want to coach or I want to do this. You can answer, can you do it or can you not, based on your numbers. And then your coach has to be able to help you make that top line number grow. And if they don't, are you gonna pay them? They'll leave more revenue, right? All right. I have another slide left somewhere. Okay, so where to start? Has anybody, who here has a budget? Raise your hand if you have a written budget. You can pull it out. You can show it to me right now. What about for your business?
I don't have any money yet.
Doesn't matter. You still have time.
I have a budget. There's just no numbers.
Well, I gave you a number, so now you got it. You know where to spend that first $10,000. All right, so where to start? And this is going to be, if you're learning early, you can forward track this, right? You hopefully won't any bad habits because you can use the last slide and you're golden. But if you're going back and you're figuring out where to start in a business budget, pull 12 months of your bank statement. Hopefully it's separate. You have that business account. You pull it and you grab a pen, paper, and highlighters. This is the best way to start. Pull 12 months before. Now, anybody want to know why this looks all funky with numbers? And this is my working copy where my math coach made me do it. So this is how I did. I got out the pen and the paper and highlighters and all that stuff. You need to be able to sort and categorize stuff quick. So you're going to go through and you're going to put, if you have a deposit, right? You can see where you made that deposit and commission. That's obviously going to be section 1. If I spent money on an ad campaign for social media, or I bought signs for my listing, that's going to be in section 2, right, under lead generation. If you have money like for occupancy, if you're renting a space or anything like that, that would go in section 3. So you're going to have 7 sections. Everything has to fit in one of those 7. So you got to categorize that according to M1A, right? Because you teach the model. So write a number next to everything and then go through those. Anybody like eyes glazing over looking at all those numbers like a deer in the headlight? Anybody like, yeah, I'm not opening that up. You guys stick with me.
We're good.
Yeah, okay, good. All right. So action items. So prepare. gather everything you need to assess spending, and then block out the time to itemize everything. You have to roll through and literally jot 1 through 9, we just talked about. Compare. So this is where, like, if you're going backwards, Tom, you'll have some reference because you've been doing it for a year. So if you go back and you pull 12 months, and you're highlighting and numbering all that stuff, and now you've added up everything for 1, everything for 2, everything for 3, you know how much you've spent in all of them, take your top line number, grab the percentages here, right there, see if you're over or under on each category of your spending, and that's where you make your adjustment. And then, so I put prepare, compare, and dare. So I think you need an accountability partner. You need a buddy, you need a coach, you need someone that can help hold you accountable for your business budget and actually doing the work. Because how many times have we sat in the class and we got all this information, we're like, oh yeah, I'll do it later, then later never comes. So I'm gonna encourage you to block out some time on your calendar to formulate a plan and figure out where your spending is going. All right. What questions do you guys have? What ahas do you have?
I have a question. Is there like an Excel spreadsheet or something like that that we can download?
Yes, I think there is. I don't know where it is.
I'll find it.
I pay a bookkeeper. I know that it exists. I can ask the TL. They probably would have that. Because I think MAPS created something where they can put that in there, and then yes, you can Excel spreadsheet it away.
That's how I do my budgeting now, is with different Excel templates, but I really like it. Because I'm very efficient with it.
Now, people get hung up sometimes and they're like, I don't know where to put stuff. I don't know where it goes. So I printed this. It was a more detailed, comprehensive list. I should say, Amber, we printed it, that tells you where stuff goes, like what section it goes in. And these are all, you know, based on the numbers that I had on there. So again, 1 through 9, and you're itemizing everything. We'll see where it goes. I think that's it. That's the bulk of what I had for you guys. That's like the meat and potatoes. What else do you want to talk about? Because we got a little more time. We got at least 10 minutes. Ask me anything you want. I'll answer it.
So you went from being someone who was a big spender with your husband,
Yep,
to obviously someone who's very strategic about their money. What were the real ahas, like what were the things that, the hard lessons that you had to learn about lifestyle and budgeting? Like what
I was
made it
spending
click
too
for
much
you?
for the income that I was making. I was just spending too much. So you have to figure out a way to spend less. And so for me, I wanted to sell the house and buy something cheaper. It's hard to get your family on board. It's hard when you're in a higher interest rate environment and you might have a lower one, but you have to figure out a way to do it. Sometimes that means bringing a roommate or doing stuff really uncomfortable that you just don't like. But you have to understand that in that uncomfortableness is growth. So if it doesn't feel good or it feels uncomfortable, it's because you're growing, it's because you're making some stuff happen. And so the biggest additional lessons that I learned, because it was part of your question, is, and I would, so Dave teaches the envelope system in terms of like paying cash for everything. I don't know how real that is, right, with today. So what I did was, the very first thing I did was I created a separate bank account, and I had my mortgage payment go out of that account. This is the first thing I did, was put that in there. And so one of the things I teach my young kids and my young buyers that buy, especially being that you might have a month or two without a mortgage payment, have them go set up that bank account right away, that nothing happened except for the mortgage payment drops out of that. And if they're paid bi-weekly, have them transfer half of that mortgage payment to that bank account right away, and then have the lender auto draft it. What's going to happen is they're going to end up with an extra payment, technically at the end of the year, right? Because there's an extra pay cycle, right? People talk about a couple of those a year. So they're going to end up with a buffer. And if they never look at that account or do anything, and let's say they lose their job, and they've done this for 5 years, they're going to have a pretty good little buffer in there. So that's a good way to kind of get ahead. I like breaking stuff up into different bank accounts. For me, that was huge. So I did a separate bank account for the mortgage where I had that drafted. I did a separate bank account for wealth building. And I started out, I think, at 10%. So when I say pay yourself first consistently, so if you made $10,000, you would take $100 of that and you put it in your wealth building account. It's only $100, but save it. You know, one of my goals was for profit share. Since I've been at KW, I opened up a separate bank account the second I started, and that's what I gave KW. Well, I've never taken a penny out of that. That's almost $10,000. I don't have a lot of profit share. I don't have a lot of people in my downline, but it's added up over time, and it's still $10,000. So my goal was to invest that into a property. And so sometimes stuff happens in the way you think. Don't get so caught up in the plan you think it's going to go perfect, because it won't. It's never perfect. I will tell you, we're about ready to make a move personally, and I think I'm going to use that money as part of the down payment. You know, it's definitely not going to be all of it by any means, but it will help offset some of the cash. So that was the biggest thing, I think. And then the third thing I would piggyback on that is knowing where and how to invest. So you're going to make some bad mistakes, and it's going to be painful because you save this money, you watched it grow, and then you're going to basically make a bad choice. And the richest man in Babylon, they talk about that. How the guy lost his money because he trusted someone else to invest it, and then he invested in the wrong thing. Again, keep it simple. If you don't understand it, don't invest in it. If your financial advisor can't explain it to you 20 different times, you still don't understand it, don't do it. Do something you understand. Tom, I think one of your questions was how to do stuff. So I think the beauty of having this wealth building account and putting this separate, it's like your opportunity account to invest in stuff, is you can just sit on that as it grows and always be looking for opportunities, right? Always be looking for opportunities. So for example, I'll give you a great example. One of the things that I do, and I know we're not supposed to talk about commissions, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, because I think everybody's charging 6%, but they're not. There's a lot of people that will take it for 5 or 1% or whatever. I don't do that. There's a lot of times that I'll invest cash on my listings to get them up to par so that the seller can make more money. I'm going to charge them for that. I'm going to charge 7% for front and cash, you know, and I could charge them interest on it if I wanted to. You could structure it however you want, but that's a prime example of opportunity, right? There's times I actually got paid off today. We had a deal several years ago that the lender flaked at the last minute and they couldn't get the deal funded. And I funded it through an LLC and a trust. I basically was the bank, if that makes sense. So I earned the interest and that sort of stuff. I set that separately, and the client didn't even know. I told her it was a group of investors. I was managing it for them, and she didn't know it was me. But the point is, there's always opportunity. I've lent on car notes. There's a lot of stuff like that I've lent on. There's more than one way to do it, right? It's not just real estate. You can look for little things. But just be cautious. If you're going to spend your money, try to weigh all the risks versus reward to make sure it makes sense. Because it really sucks to lose. And it's going to happen for 100%.
So that, when you're lending, I know when you do it like personally, it's fine, but like if you do it through an LLC, do you have to have any type of mortgage lien to the servicing license or anything to collect payment or like?
I would recommend like an agreement. You just have to written agreement, so the attorney prepares all that, and then it's like anything else. So with the mortgage, if they don't pay, you foreclose.
Yeah.
There's provisions in there if they're after so many days late, there's a late fee. Don't wait on it. It's a business transaction. I mean, if you try to make your mortgage payment on the 16th, the bank's going to charge you late fee. Right? They're not going to take that off. You're going to pay the late fee. So it's more different. If they're late, based on the grace period, it's a business transaction. It has nothing to do with anything else. And, you know, you just want your money. If you don't know where or how to invest it and it's just sitting there, I recommend you throw it into a CD or a savings or a high yield savings or a money market, whatever the minimum. Obviously, if you're putting your first $100 in there, it's not much to do anything. But as it starts to grow, if you still just don't know where you want to invest it, try to park it somewhere where it will earn a few bucks for you. It's not a lot, but it's more in compound interest and money that multiplies over time. That's why it's so powerful. Any more questions?
Yeah, one. I've got questions about saving account. Which one do you recommend?
It depends, because some of them have minimum balances. So you should be asking what type of percentage they're paying on the deposit, like for whatever you have saved, what's the percent that they pay, right? In the past, when the rates were really low, savings accounts weren't making any money at all. CDs, now we're seeing, I think, like Synovus Bank had $10,000 minimum, and they were paying 5% on a 2-month CD. So
Which one is that one?
So Novus Bank, I've got a contact there if you want, I'll give you her number. I told you to call. And they've got some really good rates on short-term rates at some of the better ones I've seen. And there's other ones that have, like Mid-Florida has a high for an extreme or high yield savings for 25,000, and they pay a pretty good amount of interest on that.
I have a citizens access that didn't have a minimum requirement, that I think is like 4.75.
Yeah, I think that's a good amount of money. So I would just open up a separate account and park the cash there and let it earn a little bit of money. The key to it, I think, is just leave it separate so that you're not spending it. It's truly there for investing in wealth building. Tell her I told you to call. They do a home equity lines of credit and stuff too. Sometimes your clients might want their information. They're pretty good.
There was a question about there was a 401k rollover. You had that?
Oh, yeah.
So I recently did one. I used to listen to Clark Howard a lot. So if you Google Clark Howard, he can give you different alternatives, whether it's Fidelity, Vanguard. I think he likes T. Rowe Price to roll it into. The differences between the Roth, and there's benefits to the Roth. There's traditional rollovers. There's also something, what I did is I went with Advanta IRA. They're over in the Palm Harbor area. I did what's called a checkbook IRA, which means that I can, or a self-directed IRA, where I can take those funds and invest in different things. There are rules associated with it, but I can buy real estate, I can buy rental properties, etc. with those funds if I choose.
I'll take that contact too, because I haven't been able to find one with a self-directed IRA. I was looking at it, and they're hard to find. It's hard to find people that understand what they are.
Self-directed IRA.
Self-directed IRA or a checkbook IRA as well. So Advanta IRA.
That might be a good one for you, because you're asking how to roll it over, then you can control it and buy real estate through it.
Which is my long-term goal. We want to rent out our current property and just buy a new primary residence, like what we spoke to earlier. I'm Melissa DeMaria's client for 14 years.
Okay.
And, you know, eventually I decided to get my license, but she's been giving me, you know, great advice along the way, and I've learned so much, because I was very much like you. My mom cannot pay her bills. She makes terrible financial decisions. We had no money when I was growing up, so that's why I'm so careful about my money. But I don't ever want that caution to hinder my potential to like leverage any, you know, credit that I have or anything like that. So
Yeah, you can
that's
be
my
cautious
main
about it,
goal.
but just try not to carry debt, right? Because you're paying 22% and you're making 5%. That's not a good
The
rate.
only debt I carry other than my house and my car is 0%.
It's risk still, but it's a better risk than 22%.
I would leverage.
Will you text me the name of the company that you have?
I will. You're going with the Dave Ramsey that you got. I always think about, you got Dave Ramsey on one, it's like the angels, like they're both angels. You got Dave Ramsey on one side saying, no credit cards, we don't need credit, budgeting, use cash, etc. And then you've got Robert Kiyosaki that says, hey, why are you rich? Well, because I'm in debt. But it's the difference between the financially literate versus illiterate.
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey's right for probably 95% of the population.
Yeah.
And I've talked to him about that, because I've been to roundtables with him on it.
Yeah.
And we've had some very direct conversations, and he'll say, Katrina, I have to teach the masses. You know, you can't.
Exactly.
And for him, they truly have no debt. For them, that means freedom to write a check or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it is. Like, if you get to a certain point where you've written a check for a car or anything you're buying, there's a lot of, it's a good feeling. Once you have that, you'll never ever go back to doing that. But I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm probably not as extreme as Robert Kiyosaki, but I did start as rogue as Dave Ramsey because I needed to learn it that way.
Absolutely.
And that's why people that inherit money wind up broke. Like they talk about lottery winners, how they're broke within the first 5 to 8 years after inheriting or winning millions. It's because they never learned the rules around money. They never learned the fundamentals around how to spend a dollar, like what we were talking about today. How do you take $1 and turn it into 10, right? you have to be smart with that and slow down. If you're just spending and writing checks and you're not paying attention, where if they would just slow down and say, gosh, I have all this money, I should educate myself and learn everything I can about money before I spend any of it, the people are set forever. Because then they're gonna maintain the same lifestyle, maybe take it up a notch if they can. But the first thing they should do would be to pay off debts, right? And the people that win the lottery and stuff, they don't even pay off their house. There's so many people that inherit money and don't pay off their house.
And not all debt is bad. So it's just like you get a loan for 2.75%.
Yeah.
I'm never, that's my mortgage on my house. I'm like, why would I? I can borrow against it, I can do this thing, but
It's hard.
as long as you understand what you're doing.
When we had a mortgage, I was saving all the cash, right? And then I didn't want to let it go because I was scared to spend it in the wrong place. And I said, well, when I get enough cash that it's enough to even my mortgage payment, I'm just gonna write a check and pay it off. And then it came to it and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. The rate's so low. So then I was like, well, maybe I can recast and I'll take out some interest and just reduce it and reduce my payment. Well, it got so complex with the bank and I got so irritated, I just said, okay, my wife's gonna pay it off. I wrote a check, I paid it off, and then I said, well, now what? We've been budgeting and saving all this money, well, I never stopped making a mortgage payment. So I drafted it, sent it to that account, I never stopped doing that. So I always did that, and now you have that money that is multiplied for your investment. That makes sense?
Hard now. We came from nothing. They go behind making something, and then trying to teach your kids that have benefited from your hard work.
Yeah.
How to not.
How did I teach them that?
Yeah, like with my daughter, she all my financial conversations that I have with her, but I try to explain to her, like, no one talking to us. We had to learn it the hard way.
The bottom line is they're not gonna listen to you, they're probably gonna listen to other people before they listen to you. So the best way to do it is to make them think, because then it's their idea, it's not yours.
Yeah.
So if you can, even if it's something as simple, I don't know how old your kids are, but if it's something as simple as allowance, right, and you're making money for chores, how do you get them in the frame of mind the same thing? How do you take 20% and look for an opportunity to make the money, right? You could teach them how to do a lemonade, with the same principles that Gary teaches. And it's about just teaching them the fundamentals, having them understand if it's losing money or it's not. If you can teach them some of those core thinking behaviors when they're young, it'll serve them well when they get older. And even when you think they don't have it or not listening, they'll surprise you one day when you go. Oh, what you said.
My oldest is 19 now, and I'm like trying to, but she needed a car. We looked at a car, but we made her, she built a car, so she's trying to build her credit in order to, like, she moves out, and like, instead of renting, why don't we find a duplex or triplex, and then you have an investment property.
Yeah, that's a good first move. I'll tell you, on the car, we didn't do that because we didn't have debt. So we were very firm on no debt, and I think just pounding those principles into my kids' heads when they were young, they learned a lot from that. Like when we were getting out of debt and we would go to the baseball field or like all the stuff, we didn't go to Beef Overeat's afterwards. My kids didn't bring Gatorade from home, they didn't get it because they weren't allowed to buy it at the concession store. We didn't give them the money. If they earned tour money and they wanted to buy it, that was on them, but they didn't want to let go of their money. But they just knew we weren't gonna do it. They were more careful with their phone. They didn't go out and smash their iPhone because they knew we weren't gonna buy a new one. They had to do it. And so we did the same thing with the cars. They had to save, they had to get a job, they had to save money, and whatever they saved, I matched them. So I'll match them on it. Now the little one saved a little bit too much cash. I had to put a cap on her, but whatever they saved, we matched it, and then they pay cash for a car. And they asked Madeline, the lesson she learned from that as a young person, invaluable.
Yeah.
What'd you learn from that, from me not co-signing for you? Because your older brother wanted me to co-sign. I said,
I
absolutely.
know I kept my car like so clean, like I cleaned it every week, like it was like my baby.
But
Yeah, I
you
worked
didn't take that car for granted either, because you had to
No.
work.
Yeah, I
You
worked-
your little butt off.
I worked at
Sonic.
Sonic at the time, and then when I turned 18, I worked at Sonic and Verizon, and then when I quit Sonic, I worked in real estate and Verizon, and then until I went full time in real estate.
But the value of the stuff, and that you teach them the value of the dollar. When you make them work for it and buy stuff and you don't just replace it, I hear that so much from my kids. Her brother's 21, and he'll tell me now, Mom, the lessons you taught me about money, I was so mad at you when I was a kid, but they're invaluable now. And they, like the phone, I use that as an example because that's such a modern day version. Like they break it and people just go buy it or go pay the deductible. We don't do it. There's a certain point where the phone is old, I'm canceling the insurance, you better take better care of it because you're gonna have to buy a new one if they're great. So we have very transparent conversations like that around money and the kids, I guess, thought we were super broke for a long time until they realized we weren't.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
I don't tell people a lot of stuff like that, but it's how we learned. I mean, it's a slow roll. You're not gonna get rich overnight. You gotta learn all these basics around money before you get anywhere.
And there's also the 8 weeks to wealth class, once you kind of have your basics down. Have you ever, what do you know about this? Yeah,
Really
it's,
good.
it's amazing.
Man, where was that when I was 20?
How about, have you any experience with the quantum leap for the younger kids?
Yeah, Maddie took it with Gary Keller. Her brother, and her younger sister, they all took Quantum Leap with Gary. So what was your experience?
It was really good. It was really good. Everything.
Now my son came back and he said, Mom, I didn't really learn anything from Gary Keller. It's like the same stuff you teach me. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You were in the room with Gary Keller. It's the perspective and mentorship.
Like me, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in the same room with Gary Keller. My brother's like, what? In my hair. My brother's like, when do we leave? Like, when's lunch?
Yeah. Exactly. All right, anything else? You can awful quiet. All right, what do you got?
I'm just absorbing everything and listening, because I think I need to, when I'm thinking more of the building generational wealth, it's when I need to be more disciplined when it comes to, when you first start out in real estate. Now, I'm going into my second year now, but.
Good, so you have a track record of some sales? You have a track record of some sales? Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm now, where I'm learning now, okay, I need to make sure that I'm separating this and doing this and creating a budget for this, so I just need to be learning.
Take your 12-month of statement, go through it, highlight, put everything in a category, see where you're overspending, and then figure out where to make adjustments. Look at where all your business came from, figure out what you need to do more of. Good? Was it worth your time today? Was it worth an hour, or am I just like that one?
No.
Well, I put this together in an hour last night, so I had an idea what I wanted to talk about, bullet points, but I had to put something behind a visual so I wouldn't forget. Otherwise, I'll be talking all over the place and there won't be any organization in one place. So, yeah, what do you got?
I loved when you said to have a separate bank account, because let me tell you what happens. When you start to make money and you put it in your family bank account, everybody thinks, well, your husband mainly, it's like, oh my God, you could pay this bill and you could do this and you could do that. And you get kind of caught up in that, what you can do with it instead of putting it back in your business. I don't let my husband see my business account for that reason. And I pay myself every month, and that's super important, and that's part of your budget. And that money there is for your business, to grow your business. And I know it's a struggle in the very beginning, because it is, because you're like, I don't even make enough to like have, but put it in your first bank account. It'll be easier for your taxes too, because eventually you're gonna be paying quarterly taxes, do your S corp, do everything you can.
You can pay that daily, you can pay it weekly, you can pay
Yes.
taxes when you get a paycheck. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, just start putting all your commission checks in a business account, because it makes it very easy to start other businesses from it. It makes it very easy to categorize how much money you do make. And then when it comes to doing your taxes, which is going to be the bane of your existence, every single transaction is already noted on your statement. You don't have to go through
You
your
say that
personal.
like it's tax time and you just had to do it.
God, I have to do it again. Like, oh my God. But it just makes your life so much easier to have a separate account. And it might not seem like there's very much in it at all, but just keep feeding the beast. Just keep feeding the beast. Any expense you have, take it from that account. Have a separate card, have a separate bank card.
Don't commingle your funds.
Yeah, do not commingle your funds. Commingling is bad. And in that way, when you want to make a business expense, you know exactly how much money you have and you don't take from your personal accounts to do it.
Yeah, your salary's gonna be small in the beginning, it's gonna be really tiny, what you pay yourself. You might have to rearrange the budget a little bit and say, okay, I made 10,000, I'm gonna pay myself $2,500 or 5,000, everything else gotta go back in the business. And you just start working your budget from there.
Yeah, and it makes it easier to train your spouse not to expect to use all that 10,000 in your commission.
You can't, you have expenses the other day.
Yeah, there's a lot. Well, just the fees, all the MLS fees, your membership fees, like all those fees, that's sacred. So you should have an amount just to run your business as sacred, that you cannot let it go beneath a certain dollar amount because of all the fees you have to pay. And that helps a lot. Like when I was a broker, I always kept my rent for a year. I've always kept everything sacred. So that means, you know, I better bust my ass if I didn't want to have like rent to pay. Like you just don't want to touch you don't want to touch what it costs to do your business.
Yeah, it'll serve you well if you get the basics around money. And just the biggest thing is, especially if you've had a year worth of spending and commissions and earnings, you can go back and really see where you spent the money, and it's pretty eye-opening. People say, oh my gosh, I spent this much here, or I paid myself this much of a salary. Yeah, you're not gonna go to your business to do that. You gotta figure out how to multiply the top line number. Good. All right, any final little to-dos before we say love you?
Thank you.
The new OE is gonna be here soon, I think within the hour. Good, and I think I answered all your questions, right? Multifamily, I think a trade up is good on that. Whoever said that, I would buy your first house as a duplex, triplex, or quad, live in it and rent out. I wrote about that in my book. If I had it to do all over again, I'd do it in a minute. It's hard to make them do it though.
It's hard to find them.
It's hard to find them because they're expensive.
So hard to find them. And that are not truly dilapidated.
Consider building it. You know, there's builders that will build it.
Consider building it, because typically where you're gonna find them are maybe in your C areas. But if you can build it, you get to choose your zip code, and you can see where the rents are commanded the most as well. So,
8 weeks of wealth was powerful. Man, I wish I had that one. You're welcome.
Well, 8 weeks of wealth.
You can Keller Williams course, they teach it, and at the tail end of it, they talk about different ways to invest in stuff with bonds and just so many different things.
It's amazing what I was talking to Cynthia. I'm like, here's what we need to do 16 weeks to wealth, because we watched the video 1 week.
We should do a mastermind on that and figure out who wants to invest stuff and then just powwow off of each other on
Yeah.
that.
So I was thinking, you know, they were doing just so much content. So watch the video in week 1. Week 2, you come back having done the work, and then you mastermind,
And then
And then-
do a giveaway, yeah.
and then go to the next week or whatever. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I got so much from it. Just the simple fact of, oh, look at your homeowners versus your car insurance, and where are you overlapping coverage and overspending.
Yeah.
Just something simple as that. It's like, oh,
They're such big.
oh yeah. It was a little overwhelming because it was so much great information, but I want to chunk it down and
Well,
take
one
some
thing,
action.
what's
Yeah.
one thing you can do?
Take action from step 1. Let's do that. And then,
Yeah, definitely.
thank you again. I
You're
sent you a
welcome.
text on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.